Have you ever walked into your own home and realized that the people you sacrificed everything for had already decided you were the perfect person to destroy? What would you do if the family you called your own smiled at you every day, while secretly building a trap that could send you to prison for the rest of your life? And what if the one person everyone believed was helpless had been silently watching every betrayal, waiting for the perfect moment to expose them all? My name is Warren Pike. I'm 36 years old, and this happened in Virginia, United States. For 5 years, I believed hard work, loyalty, and kindness would eventually earn me a place in my wife's family. Instead, those same qualities nearly cost me everything. What began as an ordinary trip home after a brutal week at work became the day I uncovered lies, greed, attempted murder, and a conspiracy that changed my life forever. This is my story. For 5 long years, I carried the Maddox family on my back. I never complained. At least not out loud. Every morning before sunrise, I left the house while everyone else was still asleep. Every evening, I came home after dark with aching muscles, blistered hands, and enough exhaustion to collapse before dinner. My paycheck paid more than just my own bills. It covered family emergencies, business expenses, luxury purchases disguised as necessities, and countless temporary loans that somehow were never repaid. Whenever someone needed help, I was the first person they called. Whenever something went wrong, I was expected to fix it. Whenever sacrifices had to be made, they were always mine. Looking back now, I should have recognized the warning signs years earlier. But love has a strange way of convincing you that suffering is simply another form of commitment. My wife, Tessa, always knew exactly what to say whenever I started questioning things. Warren, we're family. It's only until things get better. Grandpa's medical care is expensive. My parents are struggling. I don't know what we'd do without you. Those words became the soundtrack of my life. Each sentence sounded loving. Each sentence quietly emptied another piece of me. The Maddox family wasn't poor. Far from it. Everyone in town knew the name Maddox Timber and Supply. The company had been one of the largest lumber distributors in Western Virginia for decades. It supplied construction companies across several states and employed hundreds of hardworking people. The empire had been built by one man, Orson Maddox. Long before I met Tessa, Orson had transformed a small family lumber yard into a business worth millions of dollars. People respected him because he never asked employees to do work he wouldn't do himself. He believed success belonged to those willing to earn it. Then everything changed. About 2 years before the events I'm telling you about, Orson suffered a severe stroke. Almost overnight, the family announced that he could no longer speak clearly, make decisions, or understand conversations. Doctors were mentioned. Medical reports were discussed. Specialists supposedly confirmed his condition. Everyone accepted it, including me, at least at first. Lowell Maddox, my father-in-law, immediately became acting CEO of the company. Candace, my mother-in-law, suddenly managed every financial account inside the house. Tessa handled all medical paperwork involving her grandfather. The transition happened so quickly that I barely noticed it. Only later would I realize that some people move fast because they're efficient. Others move fast because they don't want anyone asking questions. The biggest change wasn't inside the company. It happened inside the house. Orson had once lived in the spacious master bedroom upstairs, surrounded by sunlight, expensive furniture, family photographs, and shelves filled with awards celebrating decades of success. After the stroke, they moved him. Not to a medical suite, not to a comfortable guest room. They placed him in a tiny bedroom behind the laundry room. It barely had enough space for a narrow bed, a dresser, and one chair. There was only one small window. Most days, the curtains stayed closed. Whenever I asked why, Tessa always answered with the same practiced smile. The light hurts Grandpa's eyes. It sounded reasonable. until I noticed nobody actually asked Grandpa if that was true. The family rarely visited him. Meals were often left outside his door. Sometimes nobody even checked whether he had eaten. Whenever I came home from work, I found excuses to spend a few minutes with him. I brought him fresh water, adjusted his blankets, opened the curtains for a while, made coffee the way Tessa once told me he liked before the stroke. Then I'd sit beside him and talk. I knew he probably couldn't answer, but I believed hearing another person's voice mattered. I'd tell him about broken forklifts at the warehouse, arguments between truck drivers, funny conversations with customers, construction projects happening around town. Sometimes I'd simply describe the weather outside. His face rarely changed, but occasionally, very occasionally, I thought I saw something in his eyes. Recognition, understanding, maybe even gratitude. Whenever Tessa caught me talking with him, she'd laugh. "You know he can't understand any of that, right?" "I know." "So why waste your time?" I shrugged. "Because if it were me lying in that bed, I'd hope someone still talked to me." She rolled her eyes every single time. "You're too soft, Warren." Maybe she was right. Maybe kindness really did make people vulnerable. But I'd rather be remembered for caring too much than for caring too little. If only I had realized who deserved that kindness. The week everything collapsed began with a disaster at work. Late Monday afternoon, my phone rang while I was repairing damaged loading equipment. It was my supervisor. "Warren, we've got a serious problem." "What happened?" "A shipment worth nearly $500,000 was sent to the wrong distribution center." I stopped what I was doing. "What?" "The paperwork is a mess. Corporate wants someone in Roanoke immediately." "How long?" "We don't know. Maybe 3 or 4 days." I sighed. "I'll pack tonight." The supervisor lowered his voice. "I know you've been working overtime already." "I'll manage." "You sure?" I laughed tiredly. When have I ever said no? That turned out to be the biggest mistake of my life. For the next 4 days, I barely slept. The warehouse outside Roanoke was chaos. Stacks of lumber had been mislabeled. Shipping manifests didn't match inventory. Delivery schedules were completely broken. Truck drivers were furious. Customers threatened lawsuits. Everyone worked nonstop trying to repair the damage. I survived on vending, machine sandwiches, stale coffee, and determination. Every night, I called Tessa. Every conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. "Everything okay at home?" "We're fine." "How's Grandpa?" "Same as always." "Tell him I'll visit when I get back." "If you want." She always sounded distracted. I assumed she was busy. Now I know she simply wasn't interested. By Friday afternoon, we finally solved the crisis. The company president thanked me personally. "You saved us hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm just glad it's over. You've earned a day off." Instead of staying in Roanoke until Saturday morning as originally planned, I decided to drive home immediately. I wanted nothing more than a hot shower, a real meal, and 1 full night of uninterrupted sleep. The drive back felt endless. Rain clouds rolled across the mountains. My shoulders ached every time I shifted gears. The radio played quietly in the background, but I barely listened. I kept thinking about home, about finally relaxing, about sleeping in my own bed. I had absolutely no idea that by choosing to come home 1 day early, I was about to save a man's life and uncover the darkest secret hidden inside my own family. The moment I pulled into the driveway, something felt wrong. Normally, even before I stepped out of my truck, I could hear something. The television. Music drifting through the kitchen window. Candace barking instructions at someone. Lowell talking on the phone about business. Tessa laughing while scrolling through social media. That afternoon, nothing. The entire property sat in complete silence. I shut off the engine and remained in the driver's seat for several seconds, listening. Not a single sound. An uneasy feeling settled deep in my stomach. Maybe everyone had gone shopping. Maybe they were visiting friends. Maybe I was simply exhausted after 4 miserable days of non-stop work. I grabbed my overnight bag and walked toward the front door. The moment I stepped inside, the silence became even heavier. The air inside the house felt strangely still. No cooking, no voices, no footsteps upstairs. I dropped my keys onto the kitchen counter, expecting someone to call my name. Nobody did. Hello, no answer. Tessa, a still nothing. I slowly walked farther into the kitchen. That's when I noticed several things all at once. The expensive luggage Tessa usually kept near the hallway closet was gone. Candace's favorite purse wasn't hanging beside the door. Lowell's golf clubs had disappeared. Even the luxury SUV that normally sat beside my pickup truck wasn't outside. The entire family had left. At first, I smiled. Maybe they had finally decided to take a vacation. Good for them. Then, my eyes landed on a folded blue note resting beneath a heavy glass paperweight in the center of the kitchen island. My name was written neatly across the front. Warren. I picked it up. The handwriting belonged to Tessa. It read, "Why took a family trip to Key West?" I frowned. Family trip. She hadn't mentioned anything about traveling. I continued reading. "Your responsibility is in the back bedroom." My heart skipped. The back bedroom. Grandpa Orson. The final sentence froze me where I stood. "Don't waste money hiring outside help. The old man will probably sleep most of the time anyway." I read those words again. Then again. Something about them didn't feel right. Not because Tessa sounded uncaring. Sadly, I had grown used to that. It was because of the timing. I was supposed to remain in Roanoke until Saturday morning. They knew that. Which meant, if they had left early Friday morning, Grandpa had been completely alone for nearly 12 hours. No food, no water, no one checking on him. A wave of panic rushed through me. I dropped my bag onto the floor and hurried toward the back hallway.
"Mr. Maddox!"
No answer. I walked faster. Grandpa, still nothing. The narrow hallway leading toward his room suddenly felt much longer than usual. Then I reached the door. I grabbed the handle. It wouldn't move. I frowned. Maybe it had swollen because of humidity. I twisted harder. Still locked. My heartbeat accelerated. Why would Grandpa's bedroom be locked? Then I looked up. My blood turned cold. A heavy metal sliding latch had been installed across the outside of the door. Outside, not inside. Someone had deliberately locked him in. No. I shoved the latch open so hard it slammed against the wall. The metal rattled loudly through the hallway. I threw the door open. A blast of scorching air exploded into my face. It felt like opening the door of an oven. I stumbled backward from the heat before forcing myself inside. The room was unbearable. The curtains had been pulled tightly shut. Every window was sealed. The air barely moved. The small digital thermometer mounted beside the dresser flashed 91 degrees. 91. Inside a tiny bedroom. My eyes shot toward the baseboard heater. Its control knob had been turned all the way to maximum. Someone hadn't forgotten to turn it off. Someone had intentionally turned it on. "Grandpa!" I rushed to the bed. Orson lay motionless beneath a thin blanket. His face was pale. Sweat soaked his pillow. His breathing was so shallow I almost couldn't see his chest moving. His lips had become dry and cracked. I immediately grabbed the plastic water pitcher from the bedside table. Empty. Every single drop was gone. Then I noticed something even worse. The carpet underneath the table was soaking wet. Someone hadn't forgotten to refill the pitcher. Someone had poured it onto the floor. A horrible realization crashed into me. This wasn't neglect. This was planned. Whoever had done this knew exactly what would happen. An elderly man, locked inside an overheated room. No drinking water. No ventilation. No one expected home for another full day. It wasn't an accident. It was an execution. And then another terrifying thought struck me. The note. The note sitting on the kitchen counter. It specifically said Grandpa was my responsibility. If he died before anyone returned, who would police believe? The hardworking husband who had been left in charge. Me. My breathing became uneven. The entire situation suddenly made horrifying sense. Someone had created the perfect story. The family goes on vacation. The son-in-law agrees to care for Grandpa. Grandpa dies from dehydration. Everyone blames Warren. I look back at the old man lying helplessly before me. No, not today. Not while I was standing here. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. I'm calling 911. My thumb moved toward the emergency button. Before I could press it, something grabbed my wrist. I froze. The grip wasn't weak. It wasn't random. It was firm, controlled, strong enough to stop my hand completely. Slowly, very slowly, I looked down. Grandpa Orson's eyes were open. Not cloudy, not confused, sharp, focused. Watching me. Every hair on my arms stood up. For nearly 2 years everyone had insisted this man couldn't even recognize his own family. Now he was staring directly into my eyes. His voice came out rough from D'Souza, but every single word was perfectly clear. Do not call the ambulance. Warren. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. For several seconds, I couldn't breathe. You. My voice barely worked. You can talk. He held my gaze without blinking. I've been able to talk for much longer than they believe. The room suddenly felt colder despite the unbearable heat. Nothing made sense anymore. Every assumption I'd lived with for the last 2 years shattered in a single sentence. Grandpa slowly tightened his grip on my wrist. His voice remained calm. Close the door. I obeyed without thinking. Now listen carefully. I nodded. There isn't much time. His eyes shifted toward the large oak dresser against the far wall. Move that dresser. I stared at him. What? Move it. Despite weighing hundreds of pounds, adrenaline gave me strength I didn't know I possessed. I pushed with everything I had. The dresser slowly scraped across the wooden floor. Dust filled the air. When it finally moved several inches away from the wall, Orson pointed toward the floorboards. Third board from the left, I knelt. He continued speaking. Press the edge. I did. Click. One floorboard lifted slightly. Hidden beneath it was a waterproof compartment. Inside sat several bottles of electrolyte water, a sealed burner phone, a thick leather folder, and a black USB flash drive. I looked back toward Orson in complete disbelief. He gave me a faint smile. Now, Warren, it's finally time you learned what your family has really been doing while you were sacrificing everything for them. And in that moment, I realized the nightmare had only just begun. For several long seconds, I couldn't move. I simply stared at the hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Then back at the man everyone had insisted was mentally gone for nearly 2 years. Nothing about this made sense. The room that had looked like a prison suddenly felt more like a command center. There were emergency supplies, fresh water, a secret phone, important documents. Someone had planned for this day. My voice finally returned. Mr. Maddox. What's happening? The Orson took another slow drink from one of the electrolyte bottles before answering. I've been waiting for someone I could trust. His words landed harder than I expected. Why me? He gave a tired smile. Because you're the only person in this house who ever treated me like I was still alive. Those words hit me straight in the heart. For 2 years, I had simply believed I was doing the decent thing. I never expected he had heard every conversation, seen every small act of kindness, remembered every visit. I need you to stay calm, Orson continued. What you're about to discover will make you angry. I already am. No. He slowly shook his head. You have no idea. He handed me the burner phone. Call Dr. Nolan Merritt. Who's that? My physician. You trust him? I trust him with my life. I dialed the number. The call was answered before the second ring. This is Warren Pike. The man on the other end immediately replied. So, he finally decided it was time. I looked toward Orson. He nodded. Bring your emergency kit, I said. He needs help. I'll be there within 40 minutes. The line disconnected. No questions, no confusion. Almost as if the doctor had been waiting for this exact phone call. I slowly looked back at Orson. How long have you been pretending? He looked toward the ceiling before answering. Nearly 18 months. I almost dropped the phone. 18 months. I recovered much sooner than everyone believed. Then why stay silent? His face darkened. Because the day I started speaking again, I overheard my own family celebrating. I frowned. Celebrating what? My stroke. The room became silent. They believed I couldn't understand them anymore. He laughed bitterly. So they stopped hiding who they really were. They discussed company money. They argued about inheritance. They mocked me. They talked about waiting for me to die. But each sentence felt heavier than the last. I couldn't believe they were my own children. His eyes slowly met mine. So I stayed quiet. You were spying on them. No, I was surviving. He pointed toward the leather folder. Open it. I untied the strap. Inside were dozens of legal papers. Hank's property records, business contracts, and handwritten notes. Every page contained dates, amounts, names, evidence. I whispered, "This is enormous. It gets worse." He pointed toward the USB drive. "Take it to my study. The laptop still works. You'll understand everything." A few minutes later, after helping Orson drink more water and lowering the room temperature, I walked into the dusty study. The room hadn't changed in years. Books lined every shelf. Old photographs covered the walls. Awards from the lumber industry stood inside polished glass cabinets. Everything looked frozen in time. I sat behind Orson's old desk, turned on the laptop. After nearly a minute, the computer finally started. I inserted the black USB drive. Only one folder appeared, the vultures. My stomach tightened. I clicked it. Hundreds of files filled the screen. Financial records, emails, video recordings, audio files, scanned contracts. Everything had been organized with military precision. The first video caught my attention. 3 weeks earlier, kitchen camera. Kitchen camera. I frowned. Had Grandpa secretly installed cameras inside his own house? Curiosity overcame me. I pressed play. The video showed our kitchen from an angle hidden near the ceiling. The date matched a Tuesday afternoon. I recognized everyone immediately. Tessa. My father-in-law Lowell. My mother-in-law Candace. They sat around the kitchen island drinking expensive wine, laughing, relaxed. Bryce wasn't just sitting beside my wife. He was holding her hand. My heartbeat stopped. Then, he kissed her. Right there, in my kitchen, in my home. The woman I'd worked myself nearly to death for smiled as she kissed another man without the slightest hint of guilt. For a moment, that betrayal alone nearly broke me. But the conversation that followed destroyed what remained of my world. Bryce slid several folders across the countertop. "Everything is ready." Lowell leaned forward. "What about Warren?" Bryce smiled confidently. "He signed every document." My chest tightened. "What documents?" Tessa laughed. "The medical expense forms." Suddenly, I remembered. 2 months earlier, she'd cried while asking me to sign paperwork she claimed was necessary to continue Grandpa's treatment. I hadn't even read the pages. I trusted her completely. Bryce opened another folder. "Our shell companies now have complete access." Lowell nodded. "Excellent. And Warren." Bryce grinned. "He is listed as the primary guarantor." Candace burst into laughter. He never reads anything." Tessa raised her wine glass. "He always believes whatever I tell him." Everyone laughed together. I felt physically sick. Then Bryce continued. "The warehouse problem has already been arranged." I leaned closer to the screen. "What?" "The shipping disaster will force Warren to stay in Roanoke for several days." Lowell smiled. "Perfect timing. No husband, no witnesses, no interruptions." My hands began shaking. The warehouse accident hadn't been an accident. It had been planned. Everything. Every exhausting hour I'd spent trying to save the company. had actually been part of their trap. Bryce leaned back comfortably. Once Orson dies, the company transfers. Lowell nodded. The equity buyers are waiting. And Warren. Bryce smiled again. When federal investigators discover the missing millions, they'll find his signature. Candace laughed so hard she nearly spilled her wine. The perfect fall guy. Tessa looked directly toward Bryce. When this is over, we're leaving the country. Then she kissed him again. This time, longer. My vision blurred. My marriage had been fake. My loyalty had been exploited. My signature had been stolen. My career had been manipulated. And now, they planned to frame me for corporate fraud. If Grandpa died, I wouldn't just lose my family. I'd lose my freedom. I slammed the laptop shut. The sound echoed through the silent study. My breathing became heavier. Rage surged through every part of my body. 5 years. 5 years of sacrifice. 5 years of believing I belonged. Only to discover I had never been family. I had simply been useful. Behind me, a calm voice finally broke the silence. I warned you. I slowly turned around. Orson stood in the doorway, leaning lightly on his cane. His eyes showed sadness, not surprise. I've watched them become strangers. He took another step into the room. But what you've seen today is only the beginning. Then he looked directly into my eyes. Warren, they never intended for either of us to survive. At that moment, I realized exposing the truth wouldn't be enough. If we made one wrong move, they would destroy us both before anyone ever believed our story. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence inside the study felt heavier than anything I had ever experienced. My entire world had collapsed in less than an hour. The wife I loved had betrayed me. The family I had sacrificed everything for had planned to destroy my life. And the man everyone believed was helpless had quietly collected enough evidence to expose them all. I finally looked at Orson. What do we do now? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked slowly toward the large window overlooking the backyard. They believe I'm already dead. I frowned. What do you mean? They don't need me alive anymore. He turned back toward me. They've already arranged the sale of the company. I remembered what Bryce had said in the recording. The investors. The shell companies. The missing money. Everything depended on Orson dying. When is the sale? Tomorrow afternoon. I felt my stomach tighten. They're that close. Orson nodded. If they believe I died today, Lowell gains temporary control long enough to sign the final agreement. And after that, the company disappears. I sat heavily in the chair. So even if we go to the police tonight, it won't stop the sale. He smiled slightly. Exactly. His calmness surprised me. Most people would panic. Not Orson. He had been preparing for this moment for months. Maybe longer. A knock echoed softly from the back entrance. That will be Dr. Merritt. A few moments later, an older man wearing a dark jacket stepped inside carrying a medical bag. Behind him came a quiet nurse pulling portable medical equipment. Neither of them appeared surprised to see Orson sitting upright. Instead, the doctor smiled. I was beginning to wonder when you'd finally reveal yourself. I nearly ran out of time. Dr. Merritt's expression became serious. So Warren found you. He saved my life. The doctor turned toward me and extended his hand. You must be Warren. I nodded. I'm Nolan Merritt. Thank you for coming. He looked toward the overheated bedroom. I suspected something like this would eventually happen. The nurse immediately began checking Orson's blood pressure, while Dr. Merritt connected an IV bag filled with fluids. After several minutes, he looked relieved. Another 5 or 6 hours. He paused. And your heart probably wouldn't have survived. I clenched my fists. They tried to kill him. Dr. Merritt looked directly at me.
Wes.
The word echoed through the room. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just the truth. I lowered my voice. Then why aren't we calling the police? The doctor glanced toward Orson before answering. because attempted murder is difficult to prove without overwhelming evidence. But we have the videos. We have much more than videos. Orson slowly reached for the leather folder. Show him. Dr. Merritt handed me the folder again. Inside, tucked behind the financial records, was another sealed envelope. I opened it carefully. The first page carried the official seal of a Virginia court. I looked closer. Psychological evaluation. Competency certification. A biometric identity verification. What is this? Orson answered. 1 month ago, while everyone believed I couldn't recognize my own name, Dr. Merritt secretly brought my attorney and a federal judge into this house. My eyes widened. You met with a judge. At 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody knew. No one. I continued reading. Every document confirmed the same conclusion. Orson Maddox was mentally competent, legally capable, completely aware of every decision he made. The next document stunned me even more. Corporate ownership transfer. My eyes moved across the page until they stopped on one name. Warren Pike. I blinked twice. Surely I had read it incorrectly. I looked again. There it was. Printed clearly. No, I whispered. This can't be right. Orson smiled. It is. I looked back toward him. What is this? It is the future. I turned another page. The legal language became unmistakably clear. Majority voting shares. Executive authority. 51% ownership. My mouth went dry. You transferred the company to me? He nodded. I transferred it to the only person who earned it. I couldn't speak. For years I'd unloaded lumber, managed warehouses, fixed problems, worked weekends, skipped holidays, all because I believed loyalty mattered. Never once had I imagined becoming owner of the company. I don't deserve this. Oh, Orson laughed quietly. That's exactly why you do. Tears threatened to fill my eyes. No one in my family ever worked because they had to. He pointed toward me. You did. No one else sat beside an old man everyone had abandoned. You did. No one else treated me with dignity after my stroke. You did. He rested both hands on his cane. Blood doesn't create family. Warren, character does. The room fell silent again. Then my phone vibrated. One new notification. I unlocked the screen. The family location sharing app. The same app Tessa insisted everyone install years ago. Out of habit, I opened it. Immediately, something caught my attention. Tessa's location. I frowned. That's strange. What is it? Orson asked. They aren't in Key West. Merritt looked over my shoulder. Where are they? I zoomed in. A luxury hotel appeared on the map. Grand Claremont Resort, Richmond, Virginia. Only 30 miles away. They never left the state. Orson wasn't surprised. I expected as much. They're waiting nearby. Exactly. They wanted to stay close enough to return the moment you discovered my body. The realization sent another chill through me. There had never been a vacation. Only an alibi. Champagne. Luxury suites. And patience. They were simply waiting for time to finish what they had started. The waiting for an old man to die alone. Waiting for me to become the perfect suspect. I looked at Orson. What happens next? His expression changed. For the first time since I'd found him, his eyes carried the same fierce determination that must have built an entire business empire decades earlier. What let them believe they succeeded? You want them to come back. I want every one of them standing inside this house. And then, a slow smile crossed his face. Then we stop reacting and start hunting. He reached toward the table and slid my phone back across to me. Send your wife a message. What should I write? He spoke calmly, almost like a chess player describing his next move several turns ahead. Tell her exactly what she has been waiting to hear. I looked down at the phone, then back at Orson. He nodded once. Tell them that I'm dead. As my fingers hovered over the keyboard, I realized the next text message I sent would decide whether justice finally arrived, or whether we all lost everything. My hands trembled as I stared at the message on my phone. Everything inside me wanted to expose them immediately. Everything inside me wanted to call the FBI, the police, every news station in Virginia. But Orson was right. If we acted too soon, they would deny everything. They would destroy evidence. They would blame me. For months they had been planning every detail. Now it was our turn. I took a slow breath and began typing. Tessa, please answer. I came home early. Grandpa stopped breathing. I don't know what to do. I haven't called anyone yet. Please come home. I read the message twice before pressing send. The trap had been set. Now all we could do was wait. Neither of us spoke during the next several minutes, Doctor. Merritt quietly removed the IV bag, while the nurse helped Orson change into one of his favorite tailored suits. Watching him transform was unbelievable. Less than 2 hours earlier, he had looked like a helpless old man abandoned in a furnace. Now he looked exactly like the powerful businessman whose photographs filled the walls of the company headquarters. His silver hair was neatly combed. His posture was straight. His eyes were sharp. He didn't look like a victim anymore. He looked like a king returning to claim his throne. Doctor, Merritt adjusted Orson's tie. They'll never expect this. Orson smiled. That's the point. Meanwhile, I walked through the house, making everything appear exactly as they expected. The overheated bedroom remained untouched. The empty water pitcher stayed beside the bed. The folded blanket remained exactly where I had found it. Nothing looked suspicious, except one thing. The old man they believed was dead was sitting quietly in the study preparing for war. 43 minutes later, my phone rang. Tessa. I answered immediately. Warren. Her voice sounded panicked. What happened? I forced myself to sound exhausted. I don't know. What do you mean? I found him in bed. I wasn't moving. I paused long enough to make my voice crack. I think Grandpa died. There was complete silence. Not grief. Not shock. Silence. Then she asked the question that confirmed everything. Has anyone else seen him? My heart sank. She hadn't asked if he was okay. She hadn't cried. She hadn't asked whether I needed help. She only wanted to know whether there were witnesses. No, I haven't called anyone. I didn't know what to do. She answered almost too quickly. Stay there. We're coming home. The line disconnected. No words of comfort. No sympathy. Nothing. I looked toward Orson. He gave a small nod. They took the bait. Exactly 45 minutes later, headlights swept across the front windows. A black luxury SUV rushed into the driveway. Another expensive sedan followed behind it. The front door burst open before anyone even knocked. Tessa rushed inside first. Her face looked worried. But after everything I'd learned, I could easily recognize the performance. Behind her came Lowell, Candace, Bryce, and two sharply dressed attorneys carrying leather briefcases. They weren't here for a funeral. They were here for paperwork. Lowell immediately looked at me. Where is he? I lowered my eyes. In his room. Candace dramatically covered her mouth. Oh my goodness. Not a single tear appeared. Bryce quietly exchanged a smile with Lowell. A tiny smile, almost invisible. But I saw it. So did Orson. Lowell placed one hand on my shoulder. You did everything you could. His voice sounded almost comforting. Almost. Then he added, we'll handle everything from here. Exactly as Orson predicted. They weren't interested in mourning. They wanted control. Lowell motioned toward one of the lawyers. Let's begin preparing the documents. The attorney opened his briefcase. Several folders appeared. Corporate ownership papers. Emergency executive transfers. Inheritance forms. Everything had already been prepared. They hadn't expected a death. They had scheduled one. Bryce quietly stepped beside Tessa. He whispered something. She smiled. Actually smiled. Standing inside a house where they believed her grandfather had just died. That single smile erased every remaining feeling I had for her. 5 years of marriage disappeared in 1 second. Lowell looked back toward me. Warren, you should probably wait in the living room. You've been through enough. I nodded slowly. You're right. I walked toward the center of the living room. Everyone followed. The lawyer spread documents across the large coffee table. Where's the doctor? There isn't one. And no police. Not yet. Lowell relaxed. Perfect. Exactly what they wanted. Then I quietly reached toward the wall. My fingers rested on the large brass light switch. Everyone watched me, confused. I smile. You know. I think before anyone signs those papers, there's someone who deserves to join this meeting. A click. The enormous chandelier flooded the room with brilliant light. Every face turned toward the far corner, and every single person froze. Sitting calmly inside his favorite leather chair, dressed in an immaculate dark suit, holding his silver cane across his lap, was Orson Maddox, alive, watching them. The color drained from Tessa's face. Bryce staggered backward. Candace screamed. One attorney actually dropped his briefcase onto the hardwood floor. Lowell couldn't speak. For several long seconds, no one moved. Finally, Orson slowly stood, without assistance, without hesitation, without looking weak. His deep voice echoed throughout the room. Welcome home. His eyes moved from one face to another. My little vultures. Tessa's knees nearly gave out. Gee, you can walk. I can. You can speak. I can. His expression became cold. And I've heard every conversation you've had for the past 18 months. Complete silence. Then another voice came from the hallway. TOE, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Everyone turned. 4 FBI agents walked into the living room. Behind them came detectives from the Virginia State Police. Then 2 investigators from the Financial Crimes Division. The lead FBI agent held up several documents. Lowell Maddox, Bryce Corwin, Tessa Pike, Candace Maddox. You are under investigation for conspiracy, wire fraud, corporate embezzlement, attempted murder, forgery, and multiple federal financial crimes. Bryce immediately ran toward the front door. An FBI agent intercepted him before he reached the handle. Lowell began shouting.
This is ridiculous! You have no proof!
The lead investigator calmly removed a black USB drive from an evidence bag. Oh, what have proof? He placed the drive onto the coffee table. We've reviewed every recording, every bank transfer, every shell company, every forged document. He looked directly at me. And thanks to Mr. Warren Pike arriving home one day earlier than expected, your attempted murder failed. The room exploded into chaos. Candace burst into tears. Bryce cursed as agents forced his hands behind his back. Lowell continued screaming at his own attorneys. The attorneys quietly stepped away from him. Neither wanted anything to do with what was happening. Then Tessa slowly walked toward me. Handcuffs hung from one wrist. Tears streamed down her face. And Warren, I'm sorry. I made mistakes. I still love you. For a moment, I remembered the woman I thought I had married, the dreams we'd built, the promises we'd made. Then I remembered the hidden videos, the forged signatures, the affair, the overheated bedroom, the empty water pitcher, the note waiting on the kitchen counter. I looked into her eyes one final time. You once left me a note. She stopped crying. You wrote, your responsibility is in the back bedroom. I believed those words meant I was responsible for protecting your grandfather. I paused. But now I understand. You accidentally gave me something much greater. She whispered. What? The responsibility to make sure justice finally reached this family. I stepped backward. The FBI agent gently guided her toward the front door. She kept looking over her shoulder, waiting for me to change my mind. I never did. 6 months later, every member of the conspiracy had been convicted. Lowell and Bryce received lengthy federal prison sentences for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Candace lost nearly everything, paying legal fees and restitution. Tessa's betrayal cost her her freedom, her reputation, and the future she believed she had stolen. As for me, I accepted the responsibility Orson had placed in my hands. Together, we rebuilt Maddox Timber and Supply with honesty instead of greed. Employees received better wages. Families received better benefits. The company once again became something people respected. Sometimes I still think about that unbearably hot room, about how close one good man came to dying, about how close I came to spending the rest of my life in prison for crimes I never committed. Then I remember something Orson told me after the trial ended. He smiled, looked across the rebuilt lumber yard, and quietly said, "Character isn't revealed when life is easy. It's revealed when betrayal gives you every reason to become cruel, and you choose justice instead." Those words have stayed with me every day since. Because the people who tried to bury my future never realized one simple truth. They thought they were building my prison. Instead, they built the evidence that set me free. The hardest lesson I learned wasn't that strangers can betray you. It was discovering that sometimes the deepest wounds come from the people you love the most. When I married Tessa, I believed I was becoming part of a family. I thought every long workday, every sacrifice, and every compromise was helping us build a better future together. Instead, I became nothing more than a tool they planned to throw away once they no longer needed me. If I had arrived home just one day later, Orson Maddox would have died alone in that overheated room. The evidence would have pointed directly at me, and I would have been arrested for crimes I never committed. My life would have ended while the people responsible escaped with millions of dollars. But fate had another plan. One unexpected decision to return home early changed everything. It saved an innocent man's life. It exposed years of lies. It uncovered a criminal conspiracy, and it reminded me that the truth always has a way of finding the light, no matter how carefully people try to hide it. After the trial, life slowly returned to normal. Not the old normal, a better one. Orson remained active in the company as a trusted advisor, but he finally allowed himself to enjoy retirement after decades of building Maddox Timber and Supply. Instead of carrying every burden alone, he spent time mentoring young managers and sharing the experience that had made the business successful in the first place. As for me, becoming the company's majority owner was never about wealth or power. It was about responsibility. The first thing I did was meet every employee personally. Many of them had worked under Orson for decades. Many had quietly suffered under Lowell's dishonest leadership. Together, we rebuilt trust inside the company. We improved workplace safety. We increased wages. We rewarded honest employees instead of greedy executives. We invested in the communities that had supported our business for generations. For the first time in years, people were proud to wear the Maddox Timber and Supply name again. The house where everything happened eventually became peaceful once more. The room behind the laundry area was completely renovated. The old heater was removed forever. The walls were painted bright colors. The large windows were installed to let in sunlight. What had once been a place of betrayal became a comfortable guest room, reminding me that even the darkest places can be transformed with enough courage and hope. People often ask me whether I hate Tessa or her family. But the truth is, I don't. Hatred would only allow them to continue controlling my life. Justice was enough. They made their own choices. They accepted the consequences. And I finally learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean welcoming someone back into your life. Sometimes forgiveness simply means refusing to let their actions continue hurting you. Today, whenever I walk through the lumber yard and see hardworking employees laughing with their families, I remember why integrity matters. Money can disappear, power can be stolen, titles can change, but character stays with you forever. If this experience taught me anything, it's these simple lessons. Never ignore the small warning signs simply because you love someone. A kindness is never weakness, but it should always be matched with wisdom. A trust should be earned through actions, not empty promises. The truth may take time to surface, but sooner or later it always does. Real family isn't determined by blood. It's determined by loyalty, respect, honesty, and love. Looking back now, I realize the people who tried hardest to destroy my future unknowingly gave me the greatest gift of my life. They forced me to discover my own strength. They taught me who truly deserved my trust, and they proved that even in the darkest moments, doing the right thing is always worth it. If you've stayed with me until the end of this story, thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking this journey with me. I truly hope this story reminded you that no matter how difficult life becomes, honesty, courage, and perseverance will always be stronger than greed and betrayal. Take care of the people who truly care about you. Never stop standing up for what's right, and never underestimate the power of the truth. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future true life inspired stories filled with mystery, justice, and unforgettable endings. I'd also love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done if you were in Warren's position? I'll leave your answer in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe, stay kind, and remember, alas, the strongest revenge isn't hatred. It's living an honest life while the truth exposes those who chose betrayal.